You're living here rent-free, my son said. Just give us half your pension. His wife agreed. I smiled, and when I stood up from that table, my heart broke. But so did their power over me. It started the year after my husband died. The house we built together had become too quiet, too heavy with memories I could no longer bear. My name is Teresa, and for the first time in my life I felt the kind of loneliness that sinks deep into your bones. The kind that makes every wall in your home echo with silence. My son Mark came to visit one evening with his wife, Vanessa, and they sat across from me with warm smiles and gentle words that back then I thought came from love. "Mom," Mark said, taking my hand, "you shouldn't be alone in that big house. Sell it, come stay with us. The kids will love having you around and you'll finally get some peace." Sounded like comfort, like care. So I agreed. I sold the only home I had ever known, the one filled with laughter, the smell of my husband's cologne, and the faint marks of my son's childhood on the walls. But instead of handing the money to Mark, I quietly bought another house. Smaller, cozier, but strong. I put it in my name, and when I showed it to Mark, he assumed it was his. He and Vanessa moved in with me soon after, saying it would help me adjust, that they'd take care of things. I didn't correct them. I just smiled, thinking family didn't need ownership to stay united. I was wrong. At first, things were peaceful. Vanessa cooked dinner, Mark mowed the lawn, and I looked after the children when they came home from school. We laughed around the same table every night, and I almost believed happiness had returned to my life. But slowly I began to notice small things, little shifts that hurt more than they should have. My favorite tea set was moved to a high shelf I couldn't reach. My framed photo of my late husband disappeared from the living room. The bedroom lights I'd always used to read before bed were replaced without asking. Then came the comments, quiet at first, whispered between the two of them when they thought I couldn't hear. "Your mom's been here almost 2 years now," Vanessa would say. "Do you realize how much she's adding to the bills?" "She's family," Mark would reply, though his tone wasn't as sure as it used to be. I kept quiet. I told myself they were just stressed, that families have moments of weakness. But I was wrong again. It all came crashing down one Sunday afternoon. Mark called for a family meeting, his voice unusually serious. We all sat around the dining table, the one I bought when I moved in, and I waited, hands folded, heart steady. "Mom," he began, "we've been thinking about how to balance things better in the house. You've been living here rent-free, and with the economy the way it is, we think it's only fair you contribute." I looked at him carefully. "Contribute how?" He exchanged a quick glance with Vanessa before continuing. "Half your pension. Just half, to help with bills, groceries, and, well, everything." Vanessa nodded. "We're not trying to be disrespectful, Mum. But we have 2 kids and expenses are tight. You don't really have much to worry about anymore." Their words hit harder than they realized. My son, the boy I'd raised alone after his father's illness, the boy I'd sacrificed everything for, was now sitting across from me, asking me to pay rent in my own house. I didn't speak immediately. I just stared at them both, feeling something inside me go very still. When I finally found my voice, it came out quiet but sharp. "You think I owe you for being here," I said slowly. Mark sighed. "Mum, don't make this harder than it needs to be. We just want what's fair." I nodded faintly. "Fair. That's an interesting word." I stood up, pushing my chair back gently. "Give me a moment." I walked to my room without another word, leaving them behind at the table. My heart was heavy but my mind was clear. I opened the chest beside my bed and pulled out a brown folder. The house deed, the purchase papers, everything. Mark had no idea that the home he claimed as his own was bought entirely with the money from the house his father and I built. He'd never bothered to ask how I managed to sell so quickly or where I'd moved the funds. He just assumed. And I'd let him. I walked back into the dining room and placed the folder on the table between them. "You wanted to talk about fairness," I said softly. "Then let's really talk about it." Mark frowned. "What's this?" "Open it." He did. I watched the confidence drain from his face as his eyes scanned the pages. The title deed, the signature, the date. His hands began to tremble slightly. "Mum, this says the house is mine," I finished quietly. "Bought with the money from the home your father and I worked our whole lives for. I never told you because I didn't want you to feel small. I just wanted peace. But now you're asking me to pay rent in my own house." Vanessa's lips parted in disbelief. "That can't be." Oh, it is, I said, my tone steady. Every wall around you, every tile beneath your feet, every door you walk through, it belongs to me. And I've let you live here all these years out of kindness. But clearly, kindness has its limits. Mark looked like he'd been struck. I didn't know. No, Mark, I interrupted softly. You never cared to know. I gathered the papers, slid them neatly back into the folder and said, you don't need to worry about my pension anymore. You should start worrying about where you'll live next. Vanessa's face went pale. What do you mean? I gave a faint, tired smile. You'll find out soon enough. Vanessa's eyes widened as she realized what I meant, her voice shaking. Vanessa, please, you can't just throw us out, we have nowhere to go. She looked at Mark, hoping he'd say something, but he was frozen, his head buried in his hands. For the first time he looked small, not like the confident man who once told me how to run my house, but like a lost boy who'd just realized the ground beneath him wasn't his after all. I stood there for a long moment, watching the two of them fall apart under the weight of their own choices. My heart didn't race, my hands didn't shake. I was calm, almost too calm. When pain lingers long enough, it stops burning and turns cold. Do you remember what your father used to say? I asked quietly. He always told you, respect builds homes, greed destroys them. I guess you never listened. Mark finally lifted his head, his eyes red and swollen. Mom, please, don't do this. I swear we didn't mean to hurt you. I thought you wanted to help us, that we were doing this together. I let out a soft, bitter laugh. Help you? Mark, I gave you everything. My time, my comfort, my peace. I sold the home your father and I built with our own hands, just so you could have a better life. And you repay me by trying to make me a tenant in my own house. Vanessa broke down, clutching the table as tears streamed down her face. We were wrong, we were stupid. Please just give us another chance. We'll do better, I promise. Their pleas echoed through the room, heavy and desperate. I could see the fear in their eyes. The fear of losing security, of losing control. And though every part of me wanted to walk away and let them face the consequences, something deeper inside me, something my husband left behind, held me still. I took a slow breath. I'm not a cruel woman, I said finally. You'll have time to find somewhere else. I won't put you on the street. But after everything you've done, I can't live here with you anymore. Mark stood and walked toward me, his voice breaking. Mom, please don't say that. You're all we have. I looked at him and for a fleeting second I saw the little boy who used to bring me dandelions from the garden, the one who used to hug me after bad dreams. But then I remembered the man who sat across from me hours ago. Cold, ungrateful, entitled. No, Mark, I said quietly. You had me. But you lost me when you decided your comfort was worth more than my dignity. Vanessa covered her mouth, sobbing harder. Mark stood there, silent, broken. I walked past them and stopped by the doorway. I'll give you until the end of the month, I said softly. After that, I want my house back and my peace. Then I left the dining room, closing the door gently behind me. For the first time since my husband died, I didn't feel lonely. I felt free. Days turned into weeks, and for a while, the house was quieter than it had ever been. No one mentioned the confrontation, though I could feel the tension simmering beneath every polite word and forced smile. Mark and Vanessa went about their routines as if nothing had happened, cooking, cleaning, taking the kids to school, but their sudden sweetness didn't fool me. It wasn't remorse, it was strategy. I started noticing things. Small things at first. Mail that used to come addressed to me started arriving in Mark's name. Bank statements, water bills, property tax notices. All redirected. One afternoon I found a letter from the land registry tucked under a pile of magazines in the living room. My heart stopped when I saw it. I opened it quietly and my worst suspicion was confirmed. Mark had submitted a transfer of ownership request for the house, using a forged version of my signature. For a moment I just sat there staring at the paper, the sound of my heartbeat loud in my ears. My own son, the boy I nursed through fevers, the boy I stayed up for nights sewing school uniforms for, was now trying to steal the very roof over my head. That night I waited until everyone was asleep. I went through the study where Mark kept his documents and found copies of the forged forms, along with a typed letter claiming that I had gifted the house to him before my health declined. The date was backdated 3 months. I stood there in the dark, staring at the cruel precision of it all, the lengths he and Vanessa had gone to erase me. The next morning I acted normal. I made breakfast, smiled at the kids, even chatted with Vanessa while she packed their lunchboxes. I wanted them to believe I knew nothing. If I'd learned anything from life, it was that silence is the sharpest weapon when you're being betrayed. Over the next few days, I contacted my lawyer, the same man who had helped me handle my husband's will. I explained everything, showed him the forged papers, and he immediately advised me to let them continue with their plan until they made it official. Once they file it, he said, we'll have legal proof of fraud. Then you'll have them right where they least expect it. So I waited. A week later, I came home early from a doctor's appointment and found Vanessa in the living room, whispering into the phone. She didn't hear me walk in. Her words froze me in place. Yes, sir, she said softly. We just need her to sign one more document and everything will be settled. She trusts me, I'll handle it. When she turned and saw me standing there, she went pale. Oh, I didn't hear you come in, she stammered. I smiled faintly. Who were you talking to, dear? Nobody, just the insurance company, she lied, forcing a laugh. I nodded slowly. Of course. That night I called my lawyer again. It's time, I told him. By the end of the month, when Mark proudly brought home the final transfer papers for me to sign, pretending it was some kind of tax clearance form, I smiled, took the pen and said gently, why don't we invite my lawyer over first? I'd feel better if someone explained it to me properly. The color drained from both their faces. Vanessa's fingers tightened around the papers and Mark's voice wavered. Mom, there's no need for that, it's just a simple form. I looked at him, calm and composed, and said quietly, oh, I know exactly what it is. Their world started to crumble right there at that dining table, the same place they'd once tried to make me pay rent. Vanessa's face drained of color as I rose slowly from my chair, my eyes never leaving hers. You should sit down, I said quietly. Both of you. Mark frowned, still pretending to play dumb. Mom, what's all this? You're overreacting. Sit, I repeated. My voice wasn't loud, but something in my tone made him obey. I went to my room, opened the drawer where I'd kept every document safe, and returned with a neatly sealed envelope. I placed it on the table and slid it toward them. You wanted me to sign something, I said softly. Now it's your turn to read. Vanessa hesitated before opening it, but when she did, I watched her hands start to shake. Mark leaned closer, his eyes scanning the first page, and I saw it the moment realization hit. Inside were copies of the forged documents they'd submitted to the land registry. Stamped, documented, and now in the possession of my lawyer and the authorities. I told you I know what this is, I said, my voice calm. Do you have any idea what forging a signature on property documents means? It's fraud, Mark. And it carries prison time. Vanessa gasped, clutching Mark's arm, her voice trembling. She's bluffing, she doesn't have proof. Oh, I have proof, I interrupted smoothly, pulling out another folder from my bag. Every document you sent. Every call you made to the notary. Even the email you wrote pretending to be me. Mark's mouth fell open. He looked completely lost, desperate. Mom, listen to me, please, it wasn't like that. We thought. You thought I wouldn't notice, I cut in sharply. You thought I was too old, too fragile, too trusting. You took my silence for weakness. But you forgot who raised you, Mark. You forgot who taught you how to build a life with integrity. Tears welled in Vanessa's eyes. Please, Teresa, we didn't mean to go that far, she whispered. We just thought the house would eventually belong to Mark anyway, and... I slammed my hand on the table, not in anger but to silence her excuses. Eventually doesn't mean steal it while I'm alive. The room went cold. Even the ticking clock on the wall seemed to stop for a moment. Mark's shoulders slumped and his voice cracked. Please, Mum, don't report us. Don't do this. We made a mistake. I'll fix it, I promise. I'll do whatever you want. I stared at him, my son trembling in shame, and a sadness deeper than anger filled me. You already broke something you can't fix, I said softly. But I won't destroy what's left of this family. I've told my lawyer not to press charges. For now. Vanessa looked up in disbelief. You mean, you're not turning us in? No, I said, my voice steady. But you'll both pack your things and leave my house by tomorrow morning. I'll take care of my own peace from here. Mark covered his face, sobbing quietly, but I didn't move to comfort him. That part of me, the mother who shielded him from consequences, was gone. As I turned to leave the table, I paused and said without looking back, You wanted this house so badly you were willing to betray me for it. So take the lesson with you. Greed makes you lose even what love gave you freely. That night, I sat alone in the quiet house, surrounded by the echoes of what used to be a family. It hurt, yes, but beneath the ache there was relief. For once, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt earned. Weeks passed after they left. The house felt different. Empty, yes, but peaceful in a way I hadn't felt in years. I could finally walk through the halls without hearing whispers behind doors, without feeling like a stranger in my own home. I started gardening again, reading in the evenings, even repainting the walls. Every brushstroke felt like reclaiming a piece of myself they had tried to erase. But peace never lasts forever. It was about 2 months later when the first call came. It was from an unknown number. I almost didn't pick up, but something in me said I should. When I answered, all I heard was quiet breathing for a moment, and then a voice I hadn't expected to hear again. "Mum, it's me. Mark." He sounded nothing like the confident man who once demanded my pension. His voice was rough, low, almost defeated. I said nothing at first, I just listened. "Mum, please don't hang up. I need to see you." I hesitated. Every part of me wanted to say no, but the mother in me couldn't. "Where are you?" I asked. He told me they were staying in a small rented flat on the edge of town. Vanessa had lost her job and Mark had been struggling to find steady work. Their savings were gone and the stress had begun to tear them apart. He said they argued every day, that the kids were confused and unhappy. As he spoke, I could hear it. That familiar mix of pride and shame that only surfaces when someone finally realizes the cost of their own actions. "I'm not asking for money," he said quietly. I just want to talk. Please." Something inside me softened. Not because I forgot what they did, but because I could hear the boy he used to be. The one who used to hug me goodnight, who believed I could fix anything. "Come by tomorrow," I said finally. But alone. The next day he showed up early. He looked exhausted, thinner, older, weighed down by more than time. The moment I opened the door, he lowered his head. I'm sorry," he whispered. I didn't say anything. I just motioned for him to sit. For a long while he said nothing. Then finally he spoke, voice trembling. "You were right. About everything. I let greed turn me into someone I don't even recognize. Vanessa and I thought we were building a future, but we were just destroying everything we had." Tears filled his eyes as he continued. "She left last week, Mum. Took the kids to her sister's. I don't blame her. I ruined everything. I thought owning this house would make me feel like a man. But losing your trust, that's what broke me." I sat quietly, my heart heavy. There was no joy in seeing him broken, only sorrow. After a long silence, I said softly, "Do you know what hurts the most, Mark? It wasn't losing money or being betrayed. It was realizing that I raised a son who thought love could be replaced by ownership." He nodded, wiping his eyes. "I know. I see it now." I looked at him, his shoulders trembling, and whispered, "Then maybe that's enough punishment. Sometimes, living with what you've done is heavier than any consequence I could give." He looked up, eyes full of regret. "Mum, can I come home?" The question hung in the air, heavy and fragile. I stared at him for a long time, then finally said, "This will always be your home, Mark. But you'll have to earn your place in it again. Not as my son who takes, but as the man your father hoped you'd be." He nodded silently, tears falling. And for the first time in years, when he said, "Thank you, Mum," I believed him. It was 2 weeks after Mark's return when Vanessa came back. I was in the garden that morning, trimming the roses, when I saw her car pull up by the gate. She stepped out slowly, dressed in plain clothes, nothing like the polished woman who once strutted around the same driveway as if she owned every inch of it. She stood there for a while, clutching her handbag, hesitant, almost afraid to walk in. I didn't move. I wanted to see what she'd do. After a long pause, she opened the gate gently and walked toward me. "Teresa," she began softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "You look well." I kept my gaze on the flowers. "What do you want?" She swallowed hard, looking around the yard as if the memories still haunted her. "I came to apologize. For everything." "Everything?" I asked without looking up. "You'll have to be specific. Because everything covers a lot of cruelty." Her voice cracked. "I know. I was wrong to ever treat you that way. I got carried away by pride, by greed. Mark told me you forgave him, and I thought maybe you could forgive me too." I set down my shears slowly and turned to face her. Forgiveness isn't a door you just walk back through, Vanessa. It's something you earn by living differently. Tears welled in her eyes as she nodded. I know that. I've been trying. I lost my job, my home, and my husband because I forgot what really mattered. I've learned my lesson, and I don't want money or a house. I just want peace. I want to do things right even if it's too late. For a moment I studied her face. The exhaustion, the sincerity, the deep regret etched into every word. Maybe once upon a time I would have softened immediately, but this time I stayed quiet. You hurt me deeply, I said finally. Not because of what you did, but because you watched it happen. You stood beside my son as he tore me down, and you said nothing. You smiled through my humiliation. Her tears fell freely now. I know, and I hate myself for it. I sighed and turned back to my roses. I can't promise to forget what you did, but I can promise not to hate you for it. That's the most I can offer right now. Vanessa wiped her face, trembling. That's more than I deserve. Thank you. Before she left, she hesitated by the gate and said quietly, You have every right to hate me, but I want you to know, I'm proud of you. For staying kind even after everything we did. Then she walked away, and for the first time her footsteps didn't sound arrogant. They sounded broken. That night Mark came into the kitchen while I was washing dishes. He didn't ask what happened, but he must have known. He just said, Thank you for giving her that chance, Mum. I looked at him, the son who had lost everything but was slowly rebuilding his heart, and I said, I didn't give her a chance for her, Mark. I gave it for you because if I can forgive her, maybe you'll believe that redemption is still possible. He lowered his head, whispering, I'll spend the rest of my life proving it is. And for the first time in a very long while I believed that maybe, just maybe, we could start again. Not as the family we once were, but as the one we finally learned how to be. In the weeks that followed, the air in the house began to change. Slowly, gently, like winter giving way to spring. Mark kept his word. He worked tirelessly, picking up shifts wherever he could, fixing things around the house and spending quiet evenings helping me in the garden. He didn't talk much about the past anymore. He just showed his remorse through actions. Every time I watched him kneel by the flower beds, carefully tending to the same soil he once wanted to claim, I saw glimpses of the man his father had hoped he'd become. Humble, patient, grateful. Vanessa, on the other hand, kept her distance for a while. But one afternoon she returned with the children. They ran up to me, their laughter echoing through the yard, and for the first time since everything fell apart, the house felt alive again. Mum says she's sorry, the little one whispered as she hugged me, and she misses you. I smiled faintly, running my hand through her hair. Tell her I heard her, I said softly. Later that evening Vanessa knocked on my door. She didn't come inside, she just stood there holding a small box. These belong to you, she said. Inside were the house keys, the old photo of my husband she'd once taken down, and the silver necklace I thought I'd lost years ago. I wanted to return everything I took for granted. Something in her voice told me this wasn't a plea for forgiveness. It was surrender. Thank you, I said quietly. It takes strength to return what pride once claimed. She nodded, her eyes glistening. We're rebuilding, Teresa. Not just for us, but for them, for the kids. I promise you'll be proud one day. And for the first time I believed her. Months passed and peace finally settled where resentment used to live. The garden bloomed brighter, laughter returned to the halls, and the ghosts of betrayal slowly faded into lessons. Mark never stopped trying to make amends, not with words but with consistency. He started volunteering at the local community center, teaching young men about hard work, integrity, and family. Every time he came home he'd kiss my forehead and say, I learned it from you, Mum. And Vanessa, she too found her way. She started a small business from home, simple but honest, and though we weren't as close as before, there was a quiet understanding between us. Respect rebuilt from ruin. One evening as the sun dipped low behind the fence, Mark and I sat on the porch sipping tea. The air was warm, the sky painted in soft shades of gold. You know, he said, his voice gentle, I used to think owning things made me strong. Now I realize strength is knowing when to let go. I smiled, looking out at the horizon. Your father would have been proud of you. He turned to me, eyes wet with emotion. I just hope I'm half the person he was. I reached over and took his hand. You're becoming exactly who you were meant to be. The wind rustled through the garden, carrying the faint scent of roses. the same ones his father planted decades ago. And as I looked at my son, older, wiser, no longer blinded by greed or pride, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace, real and lasting. Because forgiveness doesn't erase what happened, but it lets you choose what grows after. And from the ruins of betrayal, something beautiful had begun to bloom again. Family, not perfect but whole. That night, as I turned off the lights and stood at the window overlooking the garden, I whispered softly, "We did it, love. Our home is finally whole again." And for the first time in a long time, the silence in the house didn't feel empty. It felt like grace. Sometimes the people you sacrifice everything for are the same ones waiting for you to fall, not because they hate you but because they never valued what you gave in the first place. You can give your all and still be seen as a burden if the people around you lack gratitude. Loving others doesn't mean losing yourself in the process. What looked like heartbreak was actually protection. A painful ending that led to peace. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories.